Can you believe it? A man stood in our front yard, his hands shaking, eyes practically popping out with self-righteous fury, pointing a cheap knockoff Glock right at my wife's face. All because she dared to jog past the HOA clubhouse without some ridiculous ID badge. Oh, what I would have given to see the moment it hit him the woman he was threatening wasn't just any jogger. She was an active Delta Force operative, fresh off a classified mission just 2 days prior, her field gear still unpacked in our garage. There she stood, cool as a cucumber, facing this wannabe rent-a-cop who held his gun sideways like he'd watched too many bad action flicks. I knew my wife could have disarmed him with nothing but a pine cone and a zip tie, seriously. Who needs more when you're her? But in a rare moment of patience, she gave him a chance to back down. Lower the weapon, she said, calm as ever. Did he listen? Of course not. That's when things went from 0 to 100 real quick. We'd moved to this quiet little neighborhood to escape the chaos of the world. Isn't it ironic? My wife, who once diffused explosives in a thunderstorm during a hostage rescue, just wanted a slice of normalcy, a peaceful jog, maybe a garden to tend, or get this, a chicken coop. Me? I'm a cybersecurity nerd, happy as long as I've got a basement with fast fiber internet. But peace? Ha! That dream was shattered faster than you can say HOA. We'd picked this HOA-governed neighborhood just outside the city, lured by glossy brochures promising a secure, family-focused sanctuary with community spirit and optional monthly events. Sounds idyllic, right? Nowhere in those shiny pages did it mention armed cosplay fanatics patrolling the sidewalks like they were in a Call of Duty game. We should have seen the red flags when we spotted those golf carts. 4 of them lined up outside the clubhouse, painted matte black with HSD Home Safety Division in bold white letters. Budget SWAT vibes, complete with cup holders and wait for it garden gnome decals. One even had flashing blue lights zip tied to the roof. I thought, oh, cute, maybe it's for Halloween parties. Nope, wrong. These people were deadly serious. I'm talking ticket you for walking your dog without a leash on your own lawn serious. For the first week, we laid low. My wife, still wired from her deployment, busied herself organizing the garage and setting up perimeter cameras, not out of paranoia, mind you, but habit. Helps me transition, she'd say with a shrug. Meanwhile, I was glued to my home office, coding away, trying to ignore Karen Brewster, the HOA president. She showed up on day 1 with a laminated badge and 3 clipboards, flashing a smile that screamed, I've never been challenged, and I like it that way. Karen proudly declared she was available 24/7 for community-related needs and handed us a rule book thicker than a phone book. I flipped through it and nearly choked. No drying laundry outdoors. Grass can't exceed 2.75 inches. And my favorite, residents must not appear intimidating during recreational activity. What does that even mean? I asked her and she just smirked. You know it when you see it. Trouble was brewing and I could feel it in my bones. But my wife? She just nodded politely, thanked Karen for the welcome packet, and acted like she hadn't just returned from extracting foreign nationals under enemy fire. That's her superpower, staying calm, blending in. I've seen her walk into rooms crackling with tension and diffuse them with a single, perfectly timed sentence. So when day 8 rolled around and everything went sideways, I was floored. It started like any other morning. She was up at dawn, pulling on her hoodie, lacing her running shoes, and heading out for a quick loop around the neighborhood. Be back soon, she called. I was sipping coffee, settling at my desk, when ding. A motion alert pinged from our street-facing camera. A delivery, maybe? Nope. I checked the feed and nearly had a heart attack. 2 HSD golf carts were parked diagonally across the street, and there was my wife, standing stock still, hands slightly raised. In front of her, a pot-bellied man, maybe 50, stuffed into a tactical vest, waving a pistol at her chest and shouting gibberish. My coffee mug hit the floor. I sprinted outside, heart pounding, just as two more officers rolled up, looking like confused backup dancers in a bad music video. But my wife? Cool as ever, breathing slow, her gaze locked on that gun. I wanted to scream, but then I saw her right hand twitch just a flicker, but enough to tell me she was ready to end this if needed. The guy was ranting about her lack of ID, calling her suspicious for running in the restricted HOA zone without a badge. A badge for jogging? Who even thinks of that? She kept her voice steady, almost gentle. "Are you law enforcement?" she asked. His reply? "Oh, you'll love this. We're HOA police. That's higher than city cops here." I swear, a tiny smirk flickered on her lips. She gave him one final warning, "Sir, lower your weapon for your own safety." Did he listen? Nope. And what happened next was so fast I could barely process it. One blink, and the gun was on the ground. Another blink, and the guy was face first on the pavement, his arm pinned in a hold so precise, it probably has a NATO code name. She wasn't even winded. She leaned in, whispered something, wish I'd heard it, and his eyes went wide, like he'd seen a ghost. The real police showed up within 5 minutes, and the fake cops started whining about assault and resisting HOA authority. But one officer took a look at my wife, paused, and asked for her ID. She showed him something I didn't see what, and he just nodded, glanced at the HOA goons, and said, "MAAM, you're good to go." Just like that. No questions, no fuss. When Karen Brewster arrived 10 minutes later and saw her captain nursing a bruised ego, her face was a masterpiece of shock and fury. I'll cherish that look forever, but that was just the beginning. Instead of backing off, Karen declared war not just on my wife, but on both of us. "Oh, Karen, did you have any idea who you were messing with?" My wife, who could slip into a war zone undetected, who didn't just play soldier but trained them, wasn't fazed. She's taken villages back from enemy control. This neighborhood? Child's play. The emergency HOA meeting was set for 7 p.m., and by 6:30, it was like the Super Bowl had come to town. Lawn chairs lined the sidewalks, neighbors munched popcorn, and some even rolled in coolers, whispering, "This is the show of the year." Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of the cul-de-sac, had called everyone to the community center to address the violent assault on her decorated HOA officer. That phrase alone sparked memes galore in our local Facebook group, with photoshopped images of the disarmed officer now dubbed Captain Clipboard mid-faceplant. Karen paced the clubhouse like a dictator prepping for a speech, decked out in a khaki vest dripping with HOA pins and a Bluetooth headset that looked straight out of an airport control tower. I didn't want to go. My wife practically begged me not to, probably because she knew I'd say something snarky and get banned from the snack table. But after the insanity of a gun being pulled on her for jogging, I couldn't stay away. I threw on my favorite t-shirt, my wife's other ride is a Black Hawk, grabbed a notebook to look intimidating, and headed out. My wife stayed home sipping tea on the porch, watching a live stream some teenager had set up with a GoPro. She seemed amused, honestly. The meeting kicked off 2 minutes late, pure anarchy in HOA land. Karen stepped to the podium with a sigh so dramatic you'd think she was announcing a national crisis. Behind her, a whiteboard screamed emergency response strategy, complete with stick figures labeled threat actor and heroic defense. The heroic figure had sunglasses and biceps bigger than Captain Clipboard could ever dream of. "Neighbors," Karen began, her voice dripping with self-importance, "it is with a heavy heart that I report a direct and violent assault on one of our peacekeepers." Peacekeepers? Really? Not volunteers, not overzealous security buffs, but peacekeepers, like we were in a war zone. She gestured to Captain Clipboard, slouched in a chair, arm in a sling, his face a mix of humiliation and regret, probably from last night's tacos. I couldn't help myself. My molecules of emotion hand shot up. "Yes?" Karen said, her smile tight. "Quick question!" I called out. "What's this known history of aggression you're talking about?" I live with her, and she's never even raised her voice at a neighbor. Though she does raise chickens, has our rooster been throwing punches? A few neighbors chuckled. Karen didn't. Mr. Owens refrained from sarcasm, she snapped. Fine, I said, grinning. Just facts then, like how your officer pulled a gun on a woman jogging. Karen flinched but rallied. It was a miscommunication. We believed she was casing homes for theft. She was wearing a Fitbit and listening to a true crime podcast. I shot back. Exactly, Karen pounced like she'd cracked the case. She was listening to crime. That suggests intent. I just stared, speechless. Was she serious? The room started buzzing. Neighbors who'd stayed quiet to avoid fines were now whispering, questioning why their dues funded tactical vests and golf cart sirens. Then came the game changer, body cam footage. One of Karen's officers, desperate to play real cop, had a body camera with Wi-Fi cloud sync. He forgot it was uploading everything. A neighborhood kid, bless that tech-savvy teen, hacked the feed and shared the whole altercation. 5 laptops fired up at the meeting, and when the footage rolled, it was over for Karen. There was my wife, jogging calmly, earbuds in. The officer's cart screeched to a halt. He shouted about trespassing. She paused, confused, pulling out an earbud, more yelling. Then, bam, the gun came out. The room gasped. In less than 3 seconds, she disarmed him, pinned him down in a textbook hold safe. Efficient, no bruises. When the video ended, the silence wasn't fear, it was realization. Karen's story collapsed like a house of cards. Enough! Karen slammed her clipboard. That footage is unauthorized. It lacks context. What context? Someone shouted. Your guy's playing cop and threatening residents. What makes that okay? Karen tried to restore order, but the curtain was down. Neighbors demanded answers. Where were their dues going? Why an HOA police force? Who approved weapons? The vague, contradictory responses only fueled the fire. Walking home under the dim streetlights, Karen's idea to reduce light pollution, I felt the air shift. Her power, built on fear and paperwork, was crumbling. Neighbors waved without glancing over their shoulders, a first since we moved in. At home, my wife was on the porch, boots up, sipping tea. How was it? She asked, eyes twinkling. Better than cable, I laughed. You're famous now. I saw, she said, smirking. That gif of me disarming him? Over 2,000 shares. We sat, crickets chirping louder than the HOA ever allowed, and I voiced our shared thought, she's not backing down, is she? Nope, my wife said, draining her cup. She's escalating. And escalate she did. 3 days later, a certified letter arrived, no return address. But Karen's fingerprints were all over it. My wife opened it, scanned it, and handed it to me with a look that screamed, "Oh, this is gonna be fun." The HOA claimed she'd violated multiple rules, excessive aggression, intimidating presence, no neighborhood ID, and get this running with hostile energy. The fines? A whopping $1,470 due immediately or face enforcement actions. Can you imagine? My wife grabbed a pen, flipped the letter over, and jotted down names and dates. She just escalated to the wrong level, she muttered. Karen had passed 6 new bylaws overnight, none voted on, none legal. One demanded visible ID for walking in public. Another gave her security team power to issue instant fines. The worst, a clause saying anyone threatening communal peace could be expelled. Expulsion? Was this a neighborhood or a private college with Karen as the delusional dean? Karen thought she had the upper hand, used to bullying residents into silence. But my wife? She's dismantled operations 10 times more organized and 1,000 times deadlier. Karen was out of her league. The retaliation kicked off with a restraining order filed in county court, accusing my wife of militant behavior and psychological warfare with edited footage that cut out the gun incident. Too bad for Karen. Neighbors had already sent the unedited video to the judge, who tossed her filing faster than you can say frivolous. But Karen kept coming. More fines, more letters, threats of lawsuits. HOA patrols cruised by our house hourly, one aiming a speed gun at our mailbox, another hiding in a bush with binoculars. Grown adults harassing a woman who could take down a surveillance network with her thumb. That's when my wife made a call short, cryptic, just a few yes sirs and a "I'll handle the rest." She hung up and grinned. We're on the record now. Let's see how deep this rabbit hole goes. We dug into public records, property filings, financial disclosures, stuff most homeowners ignore. What we found was jaw-dropping. The HOA was funneling money to a fake landscaping company, Verdant Horizon LLC, set up by Captain Clipboard's cousin. Over 3 years, they paid $180,000 for beautification, 8 fountains, 3 repaved roads, 30 public gardens. Reality? 2 fountains, crumbling roads and weeds by the clubhouse dumpster. My wife's security footage showed no work on the listed dates. Sloppy cover-up, but enough to raise eyebrows. She called in a favor and sent the files to a federal auditor. Within 48 hours, the HOA got a records request. Karen locked down the clubhouse, posting a members-only sign, with a goon guarding the door, clutching a clipboard and a leaf blower turned deterrent device. Residents started asking, why the rising dues? Where were the upgrades? Why fines for porch furniture? Brave souls distributed my wife's audit summary factual. No drama, just proof. Karen panicked, hosting a live stream in a too big blazer, calling herself Madam President 6 times. She claimed the audit was fake, the footage deep-faked, and my wife was in a domestic threat group. Bold move, accusing a 2-time Bronze Star recipient with active military clearance. Then, a twist. An encrypted message hit my wife's phone. Need to verify status. She confirmed. And minutes later, a call from her old commander. He asked if she needed backup, not guns, but legal, surgical support. She declined, but the message was clear. Karen was in over her head. That night, my wife printed a cease and desist order from a federal office, sealed it in an envelope labeled Karen Brewster, and smiled. Now the law takes over. At 9:01 a.m., a courier in a government windbreaker delivered it. Karen froze, clutching it like a bomb. The clubhouse shut down, patrols vanished, and silence fell, but we knew it was the calm before the storm. My wife launched Operation Curb Appeal, using flyers to expose the HOA's scams, fake bylaws, insider payouts, fine totals. Lawn signs popped up. HOA, helping oligarchs abuse. And Karen's threats couldn't stop them. A retired lawyer, Miss S. Hillman, got enough signatures for a city council hearing. Karen claimed no jurisdiction, but the council shut her down. My wife presented evidence, fake companies, misused funds, illegal bylaws calmly, like she was briefing a mission. A council member asked, "What's your background?" She replied, "Active U.S. Army Tier 1 operative. Over a decade in operational planning and threat assessment." Silence. A retired Army counselor smiled. "Welcome home, ma'am." Karen's credibility? Gone. The HOA's books were audited, dues frozen, fines refunded. Then, the golf cart chase. My wife, in a Love Thy Neighbor sweatshirt, carried audit copies when Captain Clipboard floored his cart, yelling about a code red seizure. She stepped off the sidewalk and his cart flipped into a bush. She retrieved her bag, dropped a granola bar in case you're stuck, and walked off. Viral again. The HOA disbanded. Karen vanished, and peace returned. Kids on bikes, porch lights on, neighbors smiling. But Karen came back, dropping a legal defense letter claiming my wife led a military conspiracy. My wife forwarded it to the feds, chuckling. In court, Karen's slideshow gavels, HOA logos, a Photoshop tank bombed. The judge ruled her actions criminal misconduct, fining her and banning her from leadership. A block party celebrated with a sign for my wife, neighborhood hero, 0 fines since 2024. A Defense Department commendation arrived, praising her for defending rights. She filed it away, saying, "Peace is the mission now." One night, a black SUV arrived. A man handed her an envelope. She read it, eyes flashing with intensity. "When do I leave?" she asked. "Dawn," he said. She packed light, left a note. Karen was the warm-up. "This is the mission," and at sunrise walked to the SUV, steady as ever. I watched her go, coffee in hand, smiling. Our new HOA president, Tom, a retired postal worker, has one rule: don't be a jerk. Perfect. Oh, can you imagine the audacity? Karen Brewster stood at the HOA meeting podium, her voice dripping with solemnity, declaring Captain Fredrickson was injured in the line of duty, protecting our streets from a trespasser with a known history of aggression. A known history? My hand shot up before I could stop myself. "Yes?" Karen said, her smile tight and strange, like she was daring me to challenge her. "Quick question," I called out, barely containing my disbelief. "What's this known history you're talking about? I live with my wife, and she's never even raised her voice at a neighbor. Unless our rooster's been throwing punches at the chickens. I'm not sure where you're getting this." The room erupted in chuckles. "Can you blame them?" Karen's face, though? Not a hint of amusement. "Mr. Owens, we ask that you refrain from sarcastic commentary," she snapped, her clipboard trembling in her grip. "Fine," I shot back, grinning. "Just the facts from now on. Like how your officer pulled a gun on a woman out for a jog." Oh, the look on her face. She flinched, but Karen's nothing if not quick to recover. "It was a miscommunication," she insisted, voice sharp. "We had reason to believe the individual was casing homes for potential theft." Casing homes? I couldn't believe my ears. She was wearing a Fitbit and listening to a true crime podcast. Exactly. Karen pounced, as if she'd cracked the case of the century. She was listening to crime. That suggests intent. Intent? I just blinked, utterly speechless. Was she serious? The room started buzzing. Neighbors who'd kept their heads down to avoid fines were now whispering, their murmurs rippling through the crowd. Why were our HOA fees funding fake tactical vests and golf cart sirens? What was going on here? Then, the moment that changed everything, body cam footage. Oh, you won't believe this. One of Karen's officers, desperate to play real cop, had bought a body camera to feel official. What he forgot? It syncs to the cloud, and some genius neighborhood kid, bless that tech-savvy teen, hacked the feed and uploaded the whole altercation to a shared drive. 5 laptops fired up at the meeting, and when that footage rolled, Karen's world started to crumble. There was my wife, jogging calmly, earbuds in, minding her own business. The officer's golf cart screeched to a halt, blocking her path. He shouted something about trespassing, pure nonsense. She paused, confused, pulling out an earbud to hear him, more yelling, and then bam, he pulled a gun. The room gasped a collective inhale of shock. But in less than 3 seconds, my wife disarmed him, pinned him to the ground in a hold so precise it was like something out of a military manual. No bruises, no fuss, just safe, efficient, non-lethal perfection. When the footage ended, the silence wasn't fear, it was realization. Karen's narrative folded like a cheap lawn chair. Someone in the back muttered, "She should be running the HOA." Oh, I wanted to cheer. Karen slammed her clipboard on the podium, face red. "Enough," she barked. "That footage is unauthorized. It lacks context." "What context?" Another neighbor shouted. "Your guys cosplaying as cops and pointing guns at residents. What makes that okay?" Karen called for order, but it was over. The curtain had been yanked back, and there was no hiding anymore. The questions came fast and furious. Where were our dues going? Why did we need an HOA police force? Who authorized weapons? What training did these clowns have? Karen's answers were vague, contradictory, dripping with bureaucratic nonsense that only fueled the fire. Walking home that night under the dim streetlights, Karen's idea to reduce light pollution, I felt the air shift. Her power, built on fear, confusion, and endless paperwork, had taken a massive hit. Neighbors weren't just questioning her, they were rallying. For the first time since we moved in, someone waved at me without glancing over their shoulder, like they were free at last. Back home, my wife was on the porch, boots up, sipping tea, calm as ever. "How was it?" she asked, eyes twinkling with amusement. "Better than cable," I laughed, collapsing into a chair. "You're famous now." "I saw," she said, a small smile tugging at her lips. "That gif of me disarming him? Over 2,000 shares." We sat in silence, the crickets chirping louder than the HOA ever allowed, and I voiced what we both knew. "She's not going to back down, is she?" "Nope," my wife said, draining her cup with a sigh. "She's going to escalate." Oh, how right she was. 3 days later, a certified letter arrived, no return address, but we knew exactly who sent it. My wife opened it without a word, scanned it, and handed it to me with a look that screamed, "Oh, this is going to be fun." The HOA claimed she'd violated multiple community standards. Get this: excessive aggression, intimidating presence, no neighborhood ID, and my personal favorite, running with hostile energy. Hostile energy? For jogging? The fines totaled $1,470 due immediately, or face enforcement actions. Can you believe the nerve? My wife set the letter down, grabbed a pen, and flipped it over, jotting down names and dates with military precision. "She just escalated to the wrong level," she muttered, her voice low but fierce. Karen hadn't just declared war, she doubled down on her nonsense. Overnight, the HOA passed 6 new bylaws, none voted on, none filed with the city. One demanded visible ID for walking in public spaces. Another gave her security team power to issue instant fines. The kicker? A clause saying anyone threatening communal peace and harmony could be expelled. Expulsion? Was this a neighborhood or a dictator's fantasy camp with Karen as the dean of delusion? Karen thought she had the upper hand, used to bullying residents into silence or forcing them to move. But my wife? Oh, Karen had no idea. My wife has a long documented history of dismantling operations 10 times more organized and 1,000 times more dangerous than this suburban circus. And she's terrifyingly good at it. The retaliation kicked off with a restraining order filed in county court, accusing my wife of militant behavior, psychological warfare, and tactical manipulation. Karen even submitted edited footage, conveniently cutting out the moment her captain pulled the gun. Too bad for her, several neighbors had already sent the unedited footage to the judge. The filing was tossed so fast it barely touched the desk. But Karen didn't quit. More fines, more letters, threats of lawsuits. HOA patrols started cruising by our house every hour, sometimes parking nearby, pretending to take notes. One aimed a speed gun at our mailbox. Another crouched in a bush with binoculars. Grown adults harassing a woman who could disable an entire surveillance network with her left thumb. Who does that? That's when my wife made a call, short, cryptic, just a few yes sirs and nods ending with, "Thank you. I'll handle the rest." She hung up and turned to me, eyes gleaming. "We're on the record now," she said. "Let's see how deep this rabbit hole goes." The next day, we dove into public records, property filings, financial disclosure stuff most homeowners ignore. What we found? Oh, it was hilarious and horrifying. The HOA was funneling money to a fake landscaping company, Verdant Horizon LLC, set up by Captain Clipboard's cousin. Over 3 years, they'd paid nearly $180,000 for beautification, 8 fountains, 3 repaved roads, 30 public gardens. Reality? 2 fountains, crumbling roads, and weeds behind the clubhouse dumpster. My wife cross-referenced the payment records with her security footage time-stamped, crystal clear video showing no work on the listed dates. It was a cover-up, sloppy and amateur, but enough to catch the right eyes. She called in a favor and sent the files to a federal auditor, not just any auditor, a federal one. Within 48 hours, the HOA got a records request. Karen locked down the clubhouse, slapped up a members-only sign, and had a goon guard the door with a clipboard, and get this, a leaf blower turned deterrent device. Was she running an HOA or a bad action movie? Residents started asking real questions. Why the rising dues? Where were the promised upgrades? Why fines for things like too many porch chairs? Brave souls distributed my wife's audit summary factual. No drama, just cold, hard proof. Karen panicked, hosting a live stream in a blazer 3 sizes too big, calling herself Madam President 6 times. She claimed the audit was fake, the footage deep-faked, and my wife was part of a domestic threat group, accusing a 2-time Bronze Star recipient with active military clearance. Oh, Karen, you're in deep now. The fight was on and my wife was just getting started. This wasn't about our yard anymore. It was war. Suburban, passive-aggressive, golf cart-laced war, and we were ready to win. Oh, can you believe the chaos that erupted? Within 48 hours of my wife's bombshell audit, a formal request for records slammed into the HOA board like a missile. Karen Brewster, in full panic mode, locked down the clubhouse like it was Fort Knox, slapping a members-only sign on the door. And get this, one of her goons stood guard, clutching a clipboard, and wait for it, a leaf blower rigged to look like some kind of deterrent device. A leaf blower? Who does that? Meanwhile, the neighborhood was buzzing with questions, real, hard-hitting questions. Why were our dues skyrocketing every year? Where were the promised upgrades? Why were we getting fined for things like too many porch chairs or non-regulation flags? The nerve of it all. A few brave souls, inspired by my wife's courage, started marching door to door, handing out copies of her meticulously crafted audit summary. No drama, no fluff, just cold, hard facts. We kept it professional. No name calling, just numbers and proof that hit like a sledgehammer. Karen? Oh, she was spiraling. She hosted a live stream, yes, a live stream, to squash what she called a smear campaign. Picture this, Karen, perched in front of an American flag, drowning in a blazer 3 sizes too big, calling herself Madame President at least 6 times. 6. She ranted that the audit was fake, the footage was deep-faked. And hold onto your hats, my wife was part of a coordinated domestic threat group. Can you imagine accusing a 2-time Bronze Star recipient, still serving under military clearance, of being a terrorist? The audacity. Then a twist straight out of a spy thriller. One quiet evening, as we sipped coffee on the porch, my wife's phone pinged with an encrypted message, not from her usual channels, but a cryptic 4 words: need to verify status. She typed a quick reply, her fingers steady as ever. 5 minutes later, her phone rang, and a voice, calm, firm, unmistakable, came through. It was her former commander, a man she hadn't heard from in years. He asked for a briefing, checked if she was okay, and offered backup, not the kind with guns, but the kind with signatures, legal precision, and finality. She declined politely, but the message was crystal clear. Karen had stumbled into territory way above her HOA badge's pay grade. And the craziest part? She didn't even know it. She still thought this was a petty neighborhood squabble that she could bully her way through with fines and threats. That night, over dinner, my wife quietly typed up a document, printed it, and folded it into an envelope labeled Karen Brewster. No threat, no warning, just a cease and desist order from a federal office, signed, dated, and legally binding. I leaned in, heart racing. What's next? She gave a faint smile, her eyes glinting with that field-ready focus. Now we let the law do its thing, but if they stall. She didn't finish, and she didn't need to. At exactly 9:01 a.m., a courier in a navy blue windbreaker with government insignia delivered the envelope to Karen's porch. Mirrored sunglasses, not a word spoken, just handed her the papers and vanished. A neighbor saw it all and said. Karen stood frozen, clutching the envelope like it was a ticking bomb, before scrambling inside. That was the moment everything shifted. The clubhouse stayed shuttered for 2 days, no patrols, no golf carts, not even a glimpse of Captain Clipboard and his fake radar gun. Karen went silent, and for a fleeting moment, it felt like the storm had passed. But we knew better. Silence wasn't the end, it was the inhale before the scream. My wife, ever the strategist, saw the pause as an opportunity. She launched what she called Operation Curb Appeal with a straight face, like it was just another mission. But this one? Oh, it was pure genius printers, clipboards, and a surprising amount of clip art. While Karen had ruled through fear and nonsense fines, my wife was dismantling her empire with information and community power. The HOA had thrived on silence and intimidation, but she was about to flip that script. She started with flyers simple, factual, no accusations, just bullet points that cut like a knife. Where did the money go? Where didn't it go? Which bylaws were never legally filed? Which security team members were Karen's relatives or cronies profiting from fake rolls? She listed every fake violation from the past year, the fines collected, and where those dollars really ended up. Everything was sourced, everything was true, and we distributed them door to door, no confrontation, just slipped under doormats or clipped to mailboxes with a friendly note. Then came the lawn signs, and oh, were they glorious. Professionally printed with zingers like HOA helping oligarchs abuse and smile. You're being fined for blinking. One had a cartoon of Karen's face on a gavel, captioned obey or pay. They sprouted like mushrooms after a rainstorm within 3 days. 20 homes had them. Karen fired off an urgent bulletin threatening sanctions for the signs, but nobody cared anymore. The community was waking up, and fast. Then came the public hearing, spearheaded by a retired lawyer, Mrs. Hillman, who rallied enough signatures for a special city council session to investigate the HOA's legitimacy. Karen tried to block it, claiming the council had no jurisdiction over internal community matters. Ha! That argument lasted 8 seconds before the council president shut her down, declaring any group collecting fees and issuing citations under false authority was absolutely their business. We arrived early, nerves tingling. Karen showed up late, lugging a binder the size of a phone book, radiating smug desperation. She even dragged along one of her fake officers, who stood behind her like a budget Secret Service agent. My wife, cool as ever in jeans, boots, and a plain black t-shirt, clutching just one manila folder, no entourage, no nonsense. When she spoke, she didn't rant or yell, she presented, like she was briefing a mission. She laid out the fake landscaping company, the non-existent upgrades, the shell account draining our dues. She detailed every weapon incident, every misuse of funds, every HOA rule that broke state housing laws. She even played a recording of Karen threatening to personally evict anyone who brought shame to the community. The crowd laughed at that one. Then, the moment that sealed Karen's fate, a council member leaned forward, voice casual but deliberate. Mrs. Owens, what exactly is your background? My wife gave a polite nod, her calm unshakable. I'm currently active in a classified capacity within a U.S. Army Tier 1 Special Mission Unit, she said. My clearance level prohibits specifics, but I've served over a decade in operational planning, intelligence coordination, and international threat assessment. The room went dead silent. Then, an older council member, quiet until now, sat up and smiled. I thought I recognized you, he said. Welcome home, ma'am. Turns out he was retired Army. Karen's credibility? Poof! Dissolved like sugar in hot tea. After the hearing, Karen didn't dare show her face at the clubhouse. Word spread like wildfire. The HOA's books were under audit. Financial operations frozen. Residents told to stop paying dues until the mess was sorted. People demanded refunds for baseless fines, digging into their own violations like detectives. It was like the neighborhood snapped out of a trance, realizing we'd been trapped in an HOA-themed reality show, run by someone who didn't know the first thing about the law. Just when it seemed Karen might slink away, the golf cart chase happened. Oh, you'll love this. My wife was out for a walk unarmed, in broad daylight, wearing a sweatshirt that said, "Love thy neighbor," carrying a tote bag full of audit copies for neighbors still in the dark. That's it. That's all she was doing. But Karen, clearly clueless about federal injunctions, ordered Captain Clipboard to seize the unauthorized materials. He jumped into his HOA golf cart and floored it, yelling for her to stop, claiming a code red protocol that he made up on the spot. Code red? Really? My wife didn't run, she just stepped off the sidewalk. What he didn't see was the hidden trench by our house, the kind landscapers leave unfilled. He swerved. The cart hit the edge, tipped sideways, and crashed into the honeysuckle bushes. My wife didn't even flinch. She strolled over, reached into the passenger seat, and calmly retrieved her tote bag. Then, in a move that had me howling, she dropped a granola bar beside him and said, "In case you're stuck a while." The footage went viral, and Karen's reign was done. The neighborhood finally felt free again, but my wife, she was already planning her next move, with the precision that only a Delta Force operative could muster. Oh, can you even fathom the drama that unfolded? Just 48 hours after my wife's audit dropped like a bombshell, a formal request for records hit the HOA board like a thunderbolt. Karen Brewster, in full meltdown mode, locked down the clubhouse as if it were a top-secret bunker, slapping a members-only sign on the door. And get this, one of her lackeys stood guard, gripping a clipboard, and brace yourself, a leaf blower jerry-rigged to look like some kind of intimidation gadget. A leaf blower, really? Who thinks that's scary? Meanwhile, the neighborhood was buzzing with outrage. Residents started firing off real questions. Why were our dues climbing every year? Where were the fancy upgrades we were promised? Why were we getting slapped with fines for things like too many porch chairs or non-regulation flags? Can you believe the absurdity? A handful of brave neighbors, fueled by my wife's fearless example, took to the streets, going door to door with copies of her audit summary, a masterpiece of cold, hard facts. We kept it clean, no mudslinging, just numbers and proof that cut through Karen's nonsense like a knife. Karen, though, she was losing it. She went so far as to host a live stream, yes, a live stream, to counter what she called a smear campaign. Picture her, perched in front of an American flag, swimming in a blazer 3 sizes too big, proclaiming herself Madame President at least 6 times. 6. She rambled that the audit was fake, the footage was deep faked, and hold on to your hat, my wife was part of a coordinated domestic threat group, accusing a 2-time Bronze Star recipient, still active under military clearance, of being a terrorist? Oh, Karen, how bold and utterly clueless. Then, out of nowhere, a plot twist straight from a Hollywood thriller. One quiet evening, as we sat on the porch sipping tea, my wife's phone pinged with an encrypted message, not her usual channels, but a stark 4 words: "Need to verify status." Her fingers flew across the screen with that calm precision I love, sending a quick confirmation. 5 minutes later, her phone rang, and a voice, steady, authoritative, unforgettable, came through. It was her former commander, a man she hadn't spoken to in years. He asked for a briefing, checked if she was okay, and offered backup, not with firepower, but with legal, surgical precision that could end this once and for all. She declined with her usual grace, but the message was loud and clear. Karen had waltzed into a league way beyond her HOA badge's pay grade, and the wildest part? She still had no idea. She thought this was just a neighborhood spat that she could bully her way through with fines and threats. That night, over a cozy dinner, my wife quietly typed up a document, printed it, and slipped it into an envelope labeled Karen Brewster. No threats, no warnings, just a cease and desist order from a federal office, signed, dated, and as legally binding as it gets. I leaned in, pulse racing. What's next? Her faint smile held that battlefield edge. Now we let the law take over, but if they stall, she didn't finish, and she didn't need to. At exactly 9:01 a.m., a courier in a navy blue windbreaker, government insignia gleaming on his shoulder, marched up to Karen's porch. Mirrored sunglasses hid his eyes, and without a word, he handed her the envelope and vanished. A neighbor who saw it said Karen stood frozen, clutching the papers like they might explode, before darting inside in a panic. That was the moment the tide turned. The clubhouse stayed shuttered for 2 days. No patrols, no golf carts, not even a whiff of Captain Clipboard and his ridiculous radar gun. Karen went radio silent, and for a fleeting second, it felt like the storm might have passed. But we weren't fooled. Silence wasn't peace, it was the deep breath before the scream. My wife, ever the tactician, saw the lull as a golden opportunity. She launched Operation Curb Appeal with a dead serious face, like it was a covert mission straight out of her Delta Force playbook. But this one? Pure brilliance: printers, clipboards, and a surprising dose of clip art. Karen had built her empire on fear and petty fines, but my wife was about to tear it down with truth and community spirit. The HOA had ruled through intimidation and silence, but she was flipping that script. She started with flyers, sharp, factual, no accusations, just bullet points that hit like a sniper's shot. Where did our money go? Where didn't it go? Which bylaws were never legally filed? Which security team members were Karen's cousins or cronies profiting from fake jobs? She listed every bogus violation from the past year, the fines collected, and where those dollars really landed. Every fact was sourced, every claim airtight, and we delivered them door to door, no drama, just slipped under doormats or clipped to mailboxes with a friendly note. Then came the lawn signs, and, oh, were they a riot. Professionally printed, with zingers like HOA, helping oligarchs abuse and smile. You're being fined for blinking. One had a cartoon of Karen's face on a gavel, captioned "Obey or Pay." They popped up like wildfire within 3 days. 20 homes had them proudly displayed. Karen fired off a frantic bulletin threatening sanctions for the signs, but nobody batted an eye. The neighborhood was done with her nonsense. The momentum was electric, and then came the public hearing. A retired lawyer, Miss S. Hillman, rallied enough signatures to force a special city council session to probe the HOA's legitimacy. Karen tried to shut it down, claiming the council had no jurisdiction over internal community matters. Ha! That argument lasted 8 seconds before the council president tore it apart, declaring any group collecting fees and issuing citations under false pretenses was absolutely their business. We arrived early, hearts pounding with anticipation. Karen rolled in late, dragging a binder the size of a phone book, her face a mask of smug desperation. She even brought one of her fake officers to stand behind her like a knockoff Secret Service agent. My wife, cool as ever, showed up in jeans, boots, and a plain black t-shirt, holding just one manila folder, no entourage, no theatrics. When she spoke, she didn't shout or accuse, she presented like she was briefing a high-stakes mission. She exposed the fake landscaping company, the missing upgrades, the shell account siphoning our dues. She listed every weapon incident, every misuse of funds, every HOA rule that violated state housing laws. She even played a recording of Karen threatening to personally evict anyone who brought shame to the community. The crowd burst into laughter, actual laughter at that one. Then, the moment that crushed Karen's facade, a council member leaned forward, voice calm but deliberate. "Miss S. Owens, what's your background?" My wife gave a polite nod, her composure unshakable. "I'm currently active in a classified capacity within a U.S. Army Tier 1 Special Mission Unit," she said. "My clearance level prohibits details, but I've served over a decade in operational planning, intelligence coordination, and international threat assessment." The room fell silent, jaws dropping. Then, An older council member, silent until now, sat up with a warm smile. "I thought I recognized you," he said. "Welcome home, ma'am." A retired Army veteran himself, he knew exactly who she was. Karen's credibility? Gone. Dissolved like sugar in hot tea. After the hearing, Karen didn't dare show her face at the clubhouse. Word spread like lightning. The HOA's books were under audit, all financial operations frozen, residents told to stop paying dues until the mess was sorted. Neighbors demanded refunds for baseless fines, digging into their own violations like detectives. It was like the whole neighborhood woke up from a bad dream, realizing we'd been stuck in an HOA reality show run by someone who didn't know the law from a hole in the ground. Just when it seemed Karen might slink away, the golf cart chase happened. Oh, you'll love this. My wife was out for a walk unarmed, in broad daylight, rocking a Love Thy Neighbor sweatshirt, carrying a tote bag stuffed with audit copies for neighbors still out of the loop. That's it. That's all she was doing. But Karen, clearly oblivious to federal injunctions, ordered Captain Clipboard to seize the unauthorized materials. He leaped into his HOA golf cart and floored it, shouting about a Code Red protocol he invented on the spot. Code Red? Are you kidding me? My wife didn't run, she just stepped off the sidewalk. What he didn't see was the hidden trench by our house, the kind landscapers leave unfilled. He swerved, the cart tipped, and crash-landed in the honeysuckle bushes. My wife didn't even blink. She strolled over, grabbed her tote bag from the passenger seat, and, in a move that had me cackling, dropped a granola bar beside him. "In case you're stuck a while," she said. The footage went viral, and Karen's reign was toast. The neighborhood was free, but my wife, she was already plotting her next move with the precision only a Delta Force operative could bring. Oh, can you picture the sheer hilarity of it all? Captain Clipboard, in his overzealous pursuit, didn't see the hidden trench by our house, the kind landscapers dig and never bother to fill. He swerved his golf cart, hit the edge, and crash-tipped sideways right into the honeysuckle bushes. My wife didn't even blink. She strolled over, cool as a summer breeze, reached into the passenger seat, and plucked her tote bag like she was picking up groceries. Then, in a moment that had me doubled over laughing, she dropped a granola bar beside him and said, "In case you're stuck a while." Can you believe her wit? That footage, oh, it went viral faster than a cat video. After that glorious fiasco, the HOA board crumbled like a stale cookie. Several members threw in the towel, resigning in a huff. And Karen Brewster? She didn't even show her face at the next city council review. A federal compliance letter was plastered on the community bulletin board for all to see, declaring the HOA under full investigation and ordering all enforcement activities to stop immediately. Karen vanished into thin air poof. Rumor had it she took a sabbatical, while someone swore they spotted her in a nearby town, applying for a job at a real estate agency. True or not, I didn't care. The fake sirens stopped, the fines vanished, and neighbors started waving at each other again, no longer fearing a violation slip for being too friendly. My wife slipped back into her routine morning jogs, tending her garden, and the occasional hush-hush meeting with serious folks in unmarked vehicles. She never spilled a word about her work, and I knew better than to ask. But sometimes, I'd catch her checking the porch camera feed with that razor-sharp focus she had during the HOA chaos, like she was still on a mission. Karen had tried to rule our neighborhood like some tin pot dictator, but my wife? She showed her gently, professionally, with a flair only a Delta Force operative could muster that tyrants don't last long when people know how to push back. And mess with Delta Force? Oh, good luck with that. A month after the HOA officially disbanded, our neighborhood finally felt like home again. Kids zoomed around on bikes, no longer tailed by golf carts. Porch lights glowed past 9:00 p.m. without fear of fines. Neighbors actually smiled as they passed each other on the sidewalk. It was like a suffocating fog of paranoia had lifted. replaced by the simple joy of suburban life. My wife hit the streets for her early morning runs, not for exercise, but because they were hers again, her streets, her pace, no clipboards or GoPros lurking. I even got invited to neighborhood poker nights, and one sweet soul dropped off fresh zucchini from their garden just because. Isn't that what community's all about? Then, just when we thought the dust had settled, Karen made her grand comeback. Of course she did. She rolled up in a borrowed minivan, stepping out like a politician on a campaign trail, sunglasses on, scarf fluttering dramatically, clutching a leather-bound folder labeled Personal Legal Defense. She marched right up to our porch, bold as brass, and set the folder on our welcome mat without so much as a knock. I peeked out the window, eyebrow raised. My wife? Didn't even glance up from her tablet. Leave it, she said, voice calm but firm. She's trying to bait a reaction. That folder held a letter dripping with dense legal jargon, full of deflections and self-praise. Karen wasn't apologizing. Oh no. She painted herself as the victim of a grand conspiracy, claiming the audit was fake, the HOA members were coerced, and my wife was spearheading a military intimidation campaign to topple neighborhood leadership. She tossed in obscure housing laws, misquoted court rulings, and demanded mediation to avoid federal litigation. The irony was thicker than molasses. My wife skimmed the document and let out a chuckle that sent chills down my spine. She's still trying to play the long game, she said, smirking. Too bad we've already won every round. That afternoon, she forwarded the letter to the same federal office that issued the cease and desist order. We didn't lift a finger. After that, Karen had buried herself under a mountain of paperwork and fraud allegations that'd keep her busy for years. A week later, Karen strutted into court for her first hearing, representing herself. That alone was comedy gold. A neighbor who caught the live stream said she kicked off her defense with a slideshow clip art of gavels, her self-designed HOA logo, and get this, a laughably bad Photoshop of my wife next to a tank, claiming it proved paramilitary influence in local governance. Can you imagine the gall? The judge let her ramble for 10 minutes before cutting her off with one devastating question. Did you ever have the legal authority to fine or detain residents in your neighborhood? Karen tried to dodge, but the judge wasn't having it. What followed was a public takedown of everything she'd built. The court ruled her actions weren't just outside the scope of any legitimate HOA, they were criminal misconduct. She was fined, ordered to pay restitution, and banned from any residential leadership role for a decade. Back home, life rolled on like a sunny day. My wife didn't gloat no victory dance, no I told you so. Just another morning jog, another cup of green tea, and quiet updates to the perimeter sensors she maintained out of habit. But the neighborhood? Oh, we celebrated for her. Someone threw a block party with burgers, cornhole, and a playlist blasting Another One Bites the Dust on repeat. Another neighbor gifted my wife a lawn sign that read, "Neighborhood hero, 0 fines since 2024. Corny? Sure, but she kept it up, a rare nod to the spotlight. Weeks later, a surprise landed in our mailbox, a plain manila envelope, no return address, stamped with military clearance codes I'd never seen before. Inside was a single certificate, a Department of Defense commendation for her exceptional conduct and defense of constitutional rights. No ceremony, no medal, just the document and a handwritten note. We're proud of how you handled it. See you soon. My wife stared at it, eyes soft, then tucked it into her secure file cabinet, the one nobody touches. That night, I asked if she missed it, the adrenaline, the structure, the shadow world she navigated while the rest of us worried about grocery lists and school runs. She didn't answer right away, just gazed at the stars above our backyard, the breeze rustling the trees she'd planted with her own hands. Sometimes, she finally said, voice quiet, but sure. But this matters too. Peace is the mission now. We thought that was the end, but oh, there was one final twist. Late one evening, as we cleaned up from a neighborhood cookout, A black SUV pulled up clean, polished, unmarked, but radiating quiet authority. A man stepped out, suit crisp, haircut military sharp, and greeted my wife by her first name. No handshake, just a nod, like two warriors who'd seen the same battles. He handed her a sealed envelope. She read it in silence, her face unreadable, but when she looked at me, I saw that flicker of intensity, the one she wore before a deployment. Not fear, not excitement, just pure certainty. "When do I leave?" she asked, voice steady. "Transport's ready at dawn," he replied. "Briefing en route." She nodded, no hesitation, no goodbye. That night, she packed light, moving with the same precision she brought to every mission. She didn't say where she was going or how long she'd be gone, just left a note on my desk before bed. "Karen was just the warm-up. This is the mission." No signature, no details, just those words, burning with purpose. At sunrise, I watched her stride to the SUV, calm and unshakable, the way she always was. She didn't look back. I didn't expect her to. She had a job to do somewhere in a world that still needed her kind of strength. I stood on the porch, coffee in hand, smiling as the SUV vanished down the street. Our new HOA president, by the way, is Tom, a retired postal worker and an absolute gem. His first act scrapped every bylaw except one, "Don't be a jerk." Could it get any better than that?